Hi, everybody. My name is Donna Gorton, and I want to welcome you to my show, Willows Bend. And we are streaming live on the Soma Fusion Media Network. And so tonight we're going to be talking about ancient archaeological unexplained sites. It's an older show I had done a while back, but still incapacitated for handwriting purposes. So I opted for this. This was done back in July. However, it also disappeared with my archives to my original group. So that's no longer available for me to have everybody watch if they so chose. So I figured, why not redo it? And it's a longer show. In fact, back when we first covered it, there was so many different sites to cover. It turned into a 3-part show. So figured that way it would be plenty of material to cover for tonight. So before we get going, and welcome to everybody in the Facebook group. For those who are listening who aren't on Facebook, I do have my own Facebook group called the Willows Bend, and I stream live in there. So that's where I'm watching the comments, because even if I go on YouTube, I found that's the only people who are active in chat overall are my Facebook group. So, and so welcome to everybody who's watching in there. I am minding the comments on my secondary tablet. So before I begin, everybody likes me to do a little circle of protection to kind of block out any negative energy and crap from coming in. And I don't have any patience or tolerance for such. So don't try to come in and interrupt the show with any of that, because I will not be tolerated. If you have anything negative to say or bring into the show, keep it to yourself, because you will be booted out. So with that being said, so at the stage, I cast a circle of protection around all who are viewing the show, and whether on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else that we stream live, or even those who are listening outside of mainstream social media, we'll say it that way, to bar any negativity from impacting the show, but also encircle each and every one of you with a circle of protection to prevent anything negative or harmful from impacting you in your daily lives, and to follow you outside of the show as well, into your personal lives, that you may remain protected and safe from any harm, wrongdoing, or ill will that might come your way. So I will it, so mote it be. So there's that done. Let me get that moved over to there, out of the way. Hugs to you guys as well. Welcome, everybody. So I've got my old notebook pulled out. And it's funny, because this was really the first topic that jumped out at me that I thought, oh, that could be interesting. Welcome back in, Nancy. I didn't know you were having trouble getting into chat. You should have let me know. Very welcome, Sandy. Yeah, we're getting a storm here too, Tanya, that's supposed to be coming in. Hi, Dad. You did find me, Renee. Always in here. We always post the show live in here. Worst case, go to the Soma Fusion YouTube channel, and we can be viewed in there as well. So if you don't happen to be able to get into the group, then go over there to watch. If you want to watch it live, you just won't, like everybody else is pretty much hanging in the group to see the show. So we do always share the feed in here. So thank you for sharing to everyone who has. It's appreciated. Much love to all of you. All right, so ancient archaeological anomalies is kind of how I worded it originally. And again, this was originally done back July 13th of last year. I did have photos to go along with it, but I figured I wasn't going to go back through and try to screenshot all of the original photos I used, because I don't have them anymore, for one. And number two, the fact that holding my tablet still to screenshot with wrong fingers isn't going to be too easy. So figured, and for those who are just listening via the radio feeds, they can't see any photos anyway, right? So we're going to forego that tonight in lieu of just the presentation. Your son has his friends over so loud. Well, tell him to pipe down because you're watching a show, Gina, and take control of the situation, honey. It's sore still, Tanya. The stitches, I discovered she kind of put most of them in the crease line of how she so if you look on this part of my thumb, it's all along here that she opened up. But most of them are up against the crease line there, but there's like she kind of puckered the skin. It was more involved than what I was originally thought. So of course I keep overstretching the stitches here and there and wonking it on stuff, the usual that you have when you have stitches in your hand. So I just try to have it padded as best as I can up against there so it's lessening the impact. But yeah.
Looks like they did a pretty good job on it.
All things considered, I mean, it's not pretty to look at right now, but is what it is, and it could have been worse, but it was worse once they got in there than anticipated. So they had to go a little further into it than what they thought they would, but I will survive. I've had bigger procedures done before, and so it just takes time to heal, and I'm a slow healer anyway, so yeah, it hurts, but so does every surgery, right? It's kind of to be expected.
Just think of the outcome. You'll have less pain.
Yes, that is what drives me, Christopher, and for those who don't know, someone in my chat in my group is saying that you startled them by your voice because they don't see you on camera, of course. That Christopher he's behind the scenes. He's kind of our helper, like our admin, if you will. And he puts in his opinion as if he has one and whatever contributes to the conversation. So forth, helps handle any calls that might be coming in, whatever is needed. So yeah, he's kind of off camera though, but if you hear a man's voice, that's who you're hearing is Christopher. So yeah, some other people are backing up. Oh yeah, you startled me too. And yeah, me too. Because they can't see you, so all of a sudden this man's voice comes over and they don't know they can't see you. So
I didn't realize we were not on camera.
Yep, we're on camera. Well, the show is live, so everyone's now telling you hi. Now they know it's you.
Hello.
Okay, so let's get this party started. So an anomaly technically is defined as something that deviates from what's standard, normal, or expected. And I always, for those who are new to me, perhaps just listening in for the first time, I always try to lay the groundwork of a topic first in order to build on it, because how else are you going to, have a full understanding for those who are new to the topic or what have you. So Tanya says, wow, just came across my phone. It's the coldest it's been in 130 years. Holy cow, Tanya. Tanya's in Nebraska, as is my dad. Yeah, shoo. No thanks. You can keep that part of it there. I know you guys have sent the rest of the storm out this way, but it was supposed to start by 10 a.m. this morning here, and I rushed out the door without really any sleep under me to go and get to the pharmacy and get stuff done this morning and get back ahead of the storm, or just hoping that I would beat it just as it came in and started up. Oh, you're in Missouri. Duh. Sorry, Tanya. Nebraska. Somebody else we know is in Nebraska. Forgive me, love.
Gosh, I have friends on Twitter from the polar regions.
Yes.
And it's minus 60. They're having record cold too.
No, they warned about that we were gonna get hit by the Arctic blast that was gonna be coming through in January, February timeframe, and here we are. So yeah, so people are now piping in. It's like 6 degrees here. Temperature wise, it's not that bad here. Yeah, and my tablet's not going to tell me, so I'm pulling the screen down. Might black
32
out.
Here.
It's probably pretty close to that then, Christopher, because you're not too far from me.
Yeah, I'm only 2 hours from you.
Yeah. -2 here. Wind chill is -20. Lovely. Yes, Sandy's also in PA, and she says it's 28 there, so probably pretty close to what we have here. Maybe lower 20s. It's never more than a few degrees off. But yeah, it turns out then they moved the storm back a little bit to where most of it's not going to come till tonight or tomorrow. So at least it's done, but I wished I'd known that before I left.
Thank God I have a virtual appointment
Number
tomorrow.
3, Ms. Turner. Sorry, Christopher.
Thank God I'm having a Zoom appointment with my doctor tomorrow. I'm not getting out of the house, thank God.
Yes, it's supposed to get kind of nasty. They keep changing the amounts that we're supposed to get too. And that's been consistently changing every time I check the report.
What are they saying now?
No. Yeah, I don't think they know exactly what we're supposed to get.
It's like 4 to 8 now, isn't it? Something like that.
I thought I saw 3 to 7. Then was the last time I looked. Then it just keeps going back and forth. 4 to 8, 6 to 9, back down. I don't think they know. So,
so there's going to be a wretched storm.
Yeah, it's going to be nasty regardless with the the sleet and freezing rain stuff underneath it or on top of it. Either way, it's going to be a bunch of ice on top of it, so it'll be a mess.
Thank God Katie's 160 miles south of us.
Yeah, I don't know what she's due to get down in DC, but there's still, everybody is across the country. It seems to just be moving across the U.S.
Well, down here in DC, we started off with, okay, we're going to get 3 to 6 inches worth of snow. Then when it did come, it literally only just sprinkled like icing sugar. And then it was nothing. And then it turned to ice, and then it was raining, and then it was icy rain, and then it was back to snow again, and then sleet, and then I don't know what the hell. And today it's been raining.
Huh.
But it's been freezing. Like, I wouldn't go outside because it is freezing rain. But it's been, for the last, most part of the whole week has been icy. Like, ice everywhere.
Everybody's just been freezing this week. We haven't been too bad here in New York State, but, average for this time of year anyway. But the week before, we were, getting into single digits regularly. So, no, Sandy, Katie's in Washington, D.C., but she's originally from Australia. That's hence the accent.
Me and Donna had like 4 feet of snow in some areas.
My dad is saying in Nebraska, it's going to be minus 28 and feel like minus 45 tonight. Wow.
Based where we were at, Donna, where you and I are at now, it's like that big snowstorm a week ago. We had like 5 feet.
We got to go a good foot anyway. And and Texas has been getting weathered as well, unusual for this time, well, for any time. They don't ever get it that bad typically.
9 to 12 inches where Chris is at.
Yeah, we had about
the forecast
storm and stuff. So somebody's saying the Amish were on skis today. Well, at least they know how to ski. That's a positive, right? I've never learned how to ski myself, but with my balance, I wouldn't get very far anyway. So yeah, it's been a big storm front, and one of the biggest seen in a long time. It's just covering and making its way across the U.S. So, anyhow,
wow.
Yeah,
coldest storm in 120 years.
Well, they started out saying we were supposed to get 6 to 10, then they dropped it down to 6 to 9, then 4 to 8, and then 3 to 6, and then 3 to 9, and 3 to 7. They don't know. It's going to have to be a hurry up and wait and see thing. But
you live in central New York near the Ticonderoga Valley and that area.
No, I'm kind of like, if you split the state of New York in the middle, like across the middle of the state, that's about where I'm at. So I'm in between the Adirondacks and the Catskill Mountains. So
that's near the Potter Mountain Range in PA. You guys are protected by that. That's why you don't get the snow that I would get. Yeah.
So we're kind of literally out in the middle of nowhere and in the middle of everything of the state. So
it's beautiful where you're at. I wish there's a park down there I want to go to.
Yes, it's very rural and countrified and small town USA. So
yeah,
even if I don't know anybody in the town, I like the small town feel and things. I'm definitely not a city girl. So
Wow.
I can function in a city, but I don't like them.
Is it hilly where you're at?
Yes, we are surrounded by mountains, which I love. And I grew up, on the coast of Massachusetts and in New England. So coming here from Nebraska, which is all just flat corn fields everywhere you look, which I got used to, of course. But that was the first comment I made coming into New York State is, Mom, there's mountains. Yeah, I miss them a lot. And so that's why I stay here rather than going further up north back to New England. It's very similar in nature. So it's other than I don't have the ocean here, but trade-off, I guess. It's much more like Maine and New Hampshire is here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Lots of woods, lots of farmlands, lots of woods, and dairy farms are big here. And like I said, it's in between the Catskill and the Adirondack mountain ranges. So
I get one advertised as a tourist spot, just like an hour south of you, Potter County.
Yeah, it's very touristy up here as well. People come every fall for the foliage and all the little seasonal things that go on in the area are big every year too. And so, it's.
Oh, wow.
We live on tourist dollars like a lot of places do. So.
Same here. Allentown has a lot of visitors. Yep,
they do. All right, so back to the topic. So we first are going to cover the Skinnigan spears. Now, I have a quote here, and it says, quote, just occasionally, an archaeological discovery leaves one speechless. Reasons usually concern the degree of preservation, the unexpectedness of a find, and its wider implications. The discovery of a complete, unambiguous throwing spears, 380,000 to 400,000 years old at Skinnigan in Germany, meets all these criteria. And that quote is by Robin Donnell from a magazine journal called Nature, which was a respected scientific journal. So these spears, they, again, I don't have the visuals of the pictures of them anymore, but I remember what my original images were for them. And it showed intact throwing spears in situ, which means found where they were left, essentially, on the site, that were completely intact with their points still attached to them and everything else. And they dated back to around like the Bronze Age. So they're the oldest complete hunting weapons so far discovered to have been used by humans. The spear measures over 6 feet long and were found together with stone tools, horse bones, bearing butchery marks, and a possible heart. It's a big deal because previously thought fully modern humans by game hunting didn't happen until 40,000 years ago. This is 380,000 to 400,000 years old. So it kicked back the timeline of things way, way, way back from what it had been. So big difference in the adjustment in that. And they were intact. I did see the images that were associated with the site, and they were intact. I did misspeak. You can tell I collect crystals, right? I did say spheres, and I did change it and drop the H out of there. And I do have I always have my rocks with me at different times for different things, and yeah, so they're everywhere. But I use them at least. They're used for different things. So yes, there's spears, throwing spears for hunting purposes. So again, it's an important find because A, they were intact, and B, it was thought that they originally didn't, it didn't happen. Big game hunting didn't happen until 40,000 years ago, and this kicked it back, to 400,000 years in timeline of things. So big difference. Yes, I did misspeak and say spears. You guys are right. You caught it. I did say spears, and then I misspoke and said spheres. But again, at least I do use my stones, so that's a positive, right? They don't just sit looking pretty. So there's something called an UPA art, which is an out of place artifact. So that's what the acronym stands for. It's OOPA, and it's out of place artifact. Art is the acronym spelled out. And this is an artifact of historical, archaeological, or paleontological interest found in unusual context. So it's basically finding something that doesn't really fit where it's found, or it's way more older or advanced than what it should be for where it was found at. So they appear, quote, too advanced for the known technology of that time, or may suggest that a human presence was there long before humans were originally thought to have existed there. So other examples may also be hard to account for contact between different cultures to account for the conventional understanding previously thought to be, how contact occurred between different human cultures throughout the timeline of human advancement. They even have adjusted that in terms of saying, well, there was no way that, okay, yes, those that lived on the coastlines of places, for example, this is just for example, being buried under fur babies, Renee, is a great place to be. So it's thought that, like, for example, if those living on the coastal areas, it's thought that they didn't travel them, but they used the resources found in that area to survive, but they didn't really travel. And it's now known to be not true, that they have found that they traveled all up and down the coastlines, visiting different areas for trade purposes and so forth, and got exposure to other cultures that had previously, they just didn't really piece it together. But yes, so it's stuff like that. It's pushed back the understanding of the interactions there that may have existed between the different cultures. But so it's finding something that is way older than what the site is. It really doesn't make sense to have how or why it's there. And again, it becomes unexplained. Archaeology and science can't really explain why it's there, but they validate the age on it that, oh yes, it is this old. So that's called an UPA. Is the acronym of the out-of-place artifacts that get found.
You noticed the butchery of horses too, because they didn't think of domestication that far back.
Right. And, like the one with where the spears were, finding horse bones with signs of butchery. Back then there were wild horses roaming around that before the horse was domesticated. Yeah, of course they were hunted for food. You took down what you could in order to get by with. Okay, good night, Sandy. Thank you for popping in.
Makes me wonder if they used pack animals because of the long distance trips they did.
They did go on to eventually, after they were domesticated, but they didn't start out being domesticated, of course. They were wild animals, and so they would take them down as a food source because that was what was around them the most. So there wasn't the attachment to those animals that we tend to have today. And, many of us would be mortified to consider eating some of these animals for food. But when it's a survival situation, well, and again, those things weren't domesticated as part of, your workforce or for surviving purposes of hauling your supplies back and forth like pack animals or as part of the family through pets. They weren't, but these animals were just wild animals roaming around. So it was available as food.
Oh, so wow.
Yeah.
I learned something.
Well, good. That's what I like to hear from people who see my shows. So the term oopart is typically in fringe science like cryptozoology and supporters of the ancient astronaut theories. It's called fringe science because mainstream science doesn't fully accept it as an absolute fact or truth, yet they themselves don't offer an explanation of it to have it make sense. So the quote fringe scientists are the ones who do come up with these theories that it's the only one offered and it does tend to make sense. So I'm one of those that will keep an open mind regardless what source it comes from. If it makes sense to me as being validly possible and truth, then okay, I'll go with it. And if mainstream science can't explain it or mainstream archaeology can't explain it, then at that point, you have to look at what the impossible is as being possible, because you're left with nothing else besides that. So I don't discount things because of that. So next, we're going to go on to the Shroud of Turin. Now, this contains an image resembling a sepia photographic negative, is what the shroud is essentially. So it's a reverse. Hi, James and Brenda. Welcome, Mom and Dad. So it contains an image resembling a sepia photographic negative of an actual item. It first appeared in historical records in 1357, and radiocarbon dating suggested it was probably made between 1260 and 1390 CE, which is current era. No other example of a negative images from before the 19th century are known to exist. So this is unique in that fact. However, because of the time frame of what radiocarbon dates back to, now with radiocarbon dating, for those who are not so archaeologically inclined, it's basically carbon decays at a set rate. So if you find the presence of carbon, which is in all organic matter, if you find the presence of carbon in an item, because it decays at a set rate, you can tell how old approximately that an item is based on the rate of decay that exists in it of the carbon. And that is the main way that archaeological items get tested, to tell how old an item actually is. So this doesn't actually, the Shroud of Turin doesn't actually date back to, year zero when Christ was supposedly had been died and wrapped in it, but it dates back to 1,200 years after that event happened. However, again, there is no other known example of it that survives from back before the 19th century. So with that respect, it's unique. So it's accepted by Christians as the death shroud Christ was wrapped in after he was removed from the cross. It appears to show crucifixion wounds on the hands and feet and a crown of thorns. Flip it over. On the head. Now, again, there's discrepancy between faith and science here, because faith says, oh yes, absolutely, that's the image of Christ, and that's what we're taught Christ looks like. And yet science says no, it doesn't go back, it doesn't date back that far. I'm inclined to kind of follow the dating that the radiocarbon dating puts forth on it, because so for those who are new to me, in college, I minored in archaeology and had to learn the ins and outs of radiocarbon dating and how it processes out and works. And it can typically date an item accurately to within about 100-year time span. And even subtracting 100 years off of their dates of it, it still isn't going to put it back to a date of when Christ was supposedly wrapped in it after it being removed from the cross. That said, it is unique in that it's unexplained, because there's no other known example that survives past or before the 19th century. And yet here's one that dates all the way back to the 1200s, and it's still in existence. And it does support the biblical wounds and so forth that is said that Christ had. However, it's not dating back to then. So that's the unexplained part of it, is how can it be the only piece in existence, even though it doesn't date back to when Christ would have been wrapped in it as a death shroud. At the same time, it defies science in that there is no other surviving artifact that's been found that dates before the 19th century of this kind before. So there's some discrepancy there. And I guess, it's a matter of your own personal beliefs, what you find it to be, but that's what science says about it anyway, but it's still unexplained because of that discrepancy. And hopefully that makes sense to everybody in chat and so forth, or who's listening. So then we go to the Piri-Reis map. Now, this was compiled in the year 1513 by the admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis. 1/3 of the map survives and shows the western coasts of Europe, North Africa with reasonable accuracy considering how long ago it was written. And Piri stated that he used 10 Arab sources and 4 Indian maps surrounding Portuguese to create this. Okay, Tanya. Recently, it's been the focus of claims for the pre-modern exploration of the Antarctic coast. It's the first confirmed landing on Antarctica wasn't until the year 1820, which was a full 307 years before it was actually discovered. So the map of our Antarctica, the Piri-Reis map, shows Antarctica in accurate portrayal 307 years before it was alleged to be actually discovered. And so how is that found by people from Arab and Indian maps? Obviously somebody had to have been there before that, and that's just what got publicized. But yes, there's a big 307-year chunk of time between those two things. Now, only a fraction of the map still exists today because it's an ancient artifact. So it can kind of, it's basically taking texts that exist about writing about what the map contained to fill in the missing gaps of the parts of it that have since decayed to time. But a big piece of it is still intact. I've seen a photograph of it, and it's a small piece of the entire thing. But considering its age, it's a good chunk, archaeologically speaking, that was still in existence. So that's where the discrepancy comes in, is that there was Antarctica is shown as being on the Piri-Reis map 307 years before it was actually supposed to have been discovered. So the question then becomes, again, where did that knowledge come from when people from Arabia and Portuguese weren't likely to have gone exploring all the way up to the Antarctic to see what's there and to map it out? And that's what he cited as his sources. Where else did that come from? So big questions left open there. So the next we go into is the Dogu figurines, meaning literally the earthen figure, is what it translates to. Put that down so I don't keep having to hold it. Now, these small humanoid and animal figures made around 14,000 BCE, before the current era, in prehistoric Japan. Their purpose was unknown, and some think that they show alien astronauts in their gear. Only moderately late, Karen. We were talking for quite a while at the beginning of the show, so you should be good. Now, I have seen these statues, and whilst I can't definitively say that they are alien astronaut gear, it does, a lot of what they're dressed in, it does differ from how other artwork humanoid figures are shown of the artwork of that time, of what they're wearing, and it does resemble a lot of the modern astronaut wear that one would wear today to go exploring space and so forth. It does look like outer space helmets that you wear, that astronauts wear. It does look a lot like the tubing and hosing that you have to provide oxygen and stuff. So that's what makes these unique and unexplained. Excuse me. And again, if they date back to 14,000 years before, so right now they would be 14,000, what? 16,000, about 16,000 years old. And they are found in prehistoric Japan, yet they are showing astronaut style gear that they're wearing. There is no explanation for why they would, and there is nothing else in Japanese culture that shows this kind of dressing or helmets, that sort of thing, that they would be wearing for any other reasons. So makes it unknown.
That coincides with similar paintings at that time in the United States.
Yes, absolutely.
Of the same time frame.
No, they have been found in other places as well. And even in South American artwork, there are figurines that are shown that what they're dressed in could be taken as outer space wear, of, whatever you want to call it. Astronaut wear, ancient astronaut series suggests that's where, they were documenting perhaps what aliens might have worn when they came to their lands. Whether they did or didn't, I don't know. It's not for me to say. I wasn't there, and I don't have any scientific evidence that they didn't. However, it is unexplained where these style and designs would have come from, because it's not in any other part of their culture. Yeah, spacesuits, exactly. It's not in it, shown in any other aspects of their culture from that time as anything that they would have worn or designed. It's not any of their artwork designs besides these particular figures. So it does make you kind of question, wonder why that is.
And it's consistent.
Right, absolutely.
In multiple nations back then.
Well, there's even connections between other cultures that is known that they had no ties to each other or interactions with each other, showing in their artwork similarities cross-culturally as displaying similar designs and features or figures in their artwork that they had nothing to do with one another, and there's no way that they could have, because of trade routes not being in existence by any means at that time, and being on complete opposite sides of the world from each other. And yet there are similarities in their artwork as far as showing, let's say, if it's dragons, and that a belief that it was a fiery dragon that the gods came from the sky in, and inside the mouth of it, it would show the face, but it would kind of look like how a face could look through the space helmet. But it's shown in Aztec art, in addition to some Japanese art. I've seen the same thing. Or what the early underwater suits that we would wear to traverse the bottoms of the ocean in, the helmet, the apparatus for the helmet are very similar to what we could be perceived to have worn in those situations, which could be likened to astronaut helmet wear. So unexplained.
Mm-hmm.
So this time we do have spheres, the word spheres, the stone spheres of Costa Rica, or Rico, sorry. These are an assortment of over 300 petrospheres, which are stone balls. Yes, stone balls, are often attributed to the now extinct Diquis culture, Diquis culture, which were pre-Columbian indigenous culture of Costa Rica, which flourished from 700 to 1530 of the current era. So going pretty well back to nearly ground zero of our timeline, in our current era. And they were thought to be placed in lines along the approach to the houses of chiefs, but it's only speculation that that was their purpose. Now, these are like completely rounded balls, stone balls that are pretty good size. I mean, we're talking, huge. Anybody can go and look up the pictures online if they so choose. And they are spaced now at regular intervals, but some of them are really big. So they're archaeologists think that they were made by hammering natural boulders with other rocks and then using sand to polish them. But I don't know that it would be possible to create such smooth stone works using that approach to their creation, where they're going to be that even through using a hammer and a rock and a bunch of sand to create it. Doesn't quite make sense to me that they could get something so even, smooth, and unilaterally sized and shaped, like a circle, basically, because that's what they are. They're circular balls that are perfectly round and cylindrical. And same with many of the sites that were created back then out of the massive sized boulders that they used to create them. But even today, you can't fit a piece of paper in between the lines of them. And could those have been created using just a rock and a hammer and a bunch of sand to sand it smooth? I don't know. So legends say that the natives had access to a potion to soften the rock in order to mold it and make it into the ball shape, which was perfectly round and smooth. That's interesting because there've been, I always find it interesting of wanting to know what original people thought of or what they had as their legends and stories. Joel's report. Sorry, Karen. What original indigenous people had as their backstories for explaining these things, because there's still going to be some grain of truth in there. So even if it doesn't quite make sense to us, it alludes to something bigger than them that is unexplained to them. Everything from using sound to move those giant boulders around, we're into place with, to levitation through sound, things of that nature. And this is now talking about using potions to soften the rocks with, to make them moldable into round forms that are completely smooth. So however they were done, they're still pretty amazing and unexplained, and their use is unexplained as well, because they're not in straight lines in where they're located. So them being speculated that they were put in lines to mark the way to the home of a chief doesn't quite hold water to me. They're just kind of randomly placed now, and they're not light things that could just be rolled around easily into different positions. So I don't know. So the 10 great ancient mysteries of North America are the Shin Au Ab. Natalie says, oh my God, I forgot what day this was. Thanks, Sandy Miller, for reminding me. Hi, Natalie. So the Shin Au Ab is the secret underground city hidden beneath Death Valley in California. Now, allegedly, there were two men who were hauling borax out of the valley, and they described seeing mummies that were perfectly preserved and wearing fine leather and thick gold armbands and wielding gold spears. They claim that they found an underground city in there while hauling the borax out of the city, or out of their area that they were hauling it out of in California, that they found this underground city. They said that they'd seen a large polished table that looked like an ancient council chamber, giant statues of solid gold, stone vaults, and drawers full of gold bars and gemstones of all kinds. They brought out some of the treasure as proof of their discovery and tried setting up a deal with the Smithsonian scientists. When they went back to relocate the entrance, they couldn't find it, and, quote, a friend stole the treasures they brought out with them. So what do you guys think? Do you think that it is fact or fiction? Or, hey, Amanda, how you doing, beautiful?
Hi, Amanda.
Story, or a bunch of hoo-hoo, or something the Smithsonian maybe tried to cover up, or that they could be the, quote, friend that stole the treasure? What do you guys think? I have my own opinions, of course, but personally, I think that the detailed account that they brought forth. Now, these were two men who were not educated by today's standards even, yet the things they were describing, where would they have gotten the know-how to make that stuff up? and a lot of them were really anciently described things that an ancient culture might have that was very ceremonial based. Tanya says true and covered up. Yeah, I think so true too, Tanya, because there were examples early on where the Smithsonian was suggested that they might have been involved in different covering up of different things and different finds, or taking possession kind of through illegal means in order to basically hide the knowledge away from the general population until such a time as they deem fit or whatever. And these things were things that, you know, an uneducated guy who'd grown up out in the middle of nowhere, couldn't read or write, and was mostly just used to working their entire lives at hard manual labor. Where would they have a working knowledge of describing, you know, an ancient polished table and giant statues of gold stone and so forth, and the gemstones that they said they saw? I don't think that that's something an average person would create as a story just to come up with randomly. However, I do think that, again, it is possible that the Smithsonian, because they tried to make a deal with the Smithsonian scientists to say, hey, we found this, and to lead them to it, but could they have been the quote friend? Sandy's saying she heard that with the Smithsonian too. Yeah. And so could they have been the friend that stole the treasures they brought out with them? Because they would have known that that would have been hard to believe and swallow as a story. So yeah, I believe that they could have brought things up to the surface from them. And there have been reports of some cultures having underground cities that were really meant for their dead to live in when they came back. So like so above, so below, and they would create kind of underground cities for it. So okay, Deborah, have a good night. Thanks for popping in, lady. So I think there's some truth to it, personally. And that the Smithsonian was known for kind of not being quite as scrupulous and above board as they could have been back in the day. So next we move on to the Blythe intaglios, which were the America's Nazca lines. These always surprised me. I'd never heard of them before finding it for the research for tonight's show when I originally did it. So these were found in the 1930s by a pilot who was bound for Nevada, he was flying over them on his way to Nevada and saw them from the air. And it's thought they were made between 450 to 2,000 years ago. And they depict giant human figures over 170 feet long. Researchers can't explain, like the Nazca lines, how they would have been viewed or their purpose. I mean, of course, whilst they can be viewed from higher up, as for the Nazca lines, research and scientists say that they can be viewed from the surrounding hills, but that to me doesn't seem like it would be valid enough reason to create such things on a big scale as what the lines are made on. So I don't really quite buy that as a line of or an explanation, and that they are best viewed from the air. So, I mean, if you have something that's over 170 feet long, as are the Nazca lines, then what would be their purpose for creating? Some say that if you walk the lines, that they would there'd be ceremonial spots along them where people could leave offerings and so forth, which I do believe they could have been used as in addition to, but they were best visible from the air. Like if you're walking them at ground level, you're not going to recognize what the design is supposed to be. So why make them into that design? Nothing was done without purpose, even that far back. So yeah, I think there's an alternate explanation out there on those too.
Back then, everything had to be of utility because of lack of resources.
So, and every culture has stories of interactions of beings coming from the sky that they called gods because they couldn't explain the technology they had or the advancement of flight or whatever it was, or the accounting for how different they may have looked. And every ancient culture has those stories in them. Okay, so Annette's talking to Sandy, sorry. And so I think that, yes, I completely agree that is, if they're best viewed from the sky, yet they didn't have the capability for flight back then, well, then obviously it was made for somebody who could fly, right? Just saying. So next we move on to New England's Mystery Stone. Now, these were discovered in 1872 by construction workers, and it's a lodestone from a compass that dates to 1250 BCE to 1600 BCE, which is before current era, meaning you go back to our ground zero, our year zero, which was supposed to, when Christ died and so forth, to go back then. So go back another 1600 years before that is when he's date to. But people still aren't sure of its exact purpose. So it's 4 inches long and 2.5 inches thick. And on one side, it looks like a inverted arrow, a moon, and some dots with a spiral on it. And on another side, it shows an ear of corn and a depressed circle with 3 figures. American naturalists think it may have commemorated a treaty between tribes. Others still have guessed that it's either Celtic or Inuit origins to it, but I don't know. Because it has the arrow for like a compass too, could it have been used for an early compass? Perhaps, but it's really unexplained as to what its original use was, in addition to having symbols on it that were representative of many different American tribes back then, but from different areas. So I could see where the idea coming from, for that it was related to different treaties, but of being Celtic or Inuit origins, I don't know what evidence they would have to support that as being a guess for it, but it's not known what it is for, so still remains unexplained. So then we go on to the Judicula Rock in Sylva, North Carolina. And this is a soapstone boulder covered. I've seen a picture of it. Every available inch of space on this rock is covered with a plethora of strange markings. According to the Cherokee, the markings were made by Judicula, who was a slant-eyed giant who could leap from one mountain to the next and even control the weather. They even believe that the stone contains his 7-figured handprint. So a lot of giants are thought to have 7 fingers on their hands, not 5 like we have. But there is a giant handprint on there containing 2 extra fingers, unexplained. And it's one of 3 other stones found on the land considered a sacred site by the Cherokee. One was buried in a 20th century mining operation, and the others now can't be found. Unfortunately, the rock is quickly eroding due to the weather and its exposure, as well as by visitors wanting to take pictures of it all the time or touching it, running their hands over it, etc. It's eroding the rock. Soapstone is a very soft rock in comparison to some others out there, and it's very malleable, meaning it's not difficult to make markings on it. So if you're constantly running your hands over the surface of it, yes, it's going to slowly erode the different markings on it. So it's now kind of roped off and kept separate from visitors. It's now owned by the Jackson Company and can be viewed during the day for free, but they do have it kind of marked off and protected with roping now to keep the general population from, climbing all over top of it and so forth. But you can still get pictures of it and whatnot. And I think that they do now cover it in times of inclement weather to help protect it as well. But it is considered sacred to the Cherokee. So interesting piece anyway. And I mean, it's something that I think is worthy of looking up at, to get close up of the image of it, because every available inch of this rock is covered with different writing symbols. It's unknown what all of them are, what they mean, what language it may be. The Cherokee don't recognize it as a language, but they wonder if the giant isn't partly responsible for it. So next we go on to West Virginia and a place known as Waffle Rock. Now, again, its origins are unknown, and it's in Jennings-Randolph Lake, Mineral County in West Virginia. It was part of a larger outcrop formation, but got moved to its current location due to dam construction. So they were building a dam, they moved this rock to help preserve it. So it's not where it was originally found, but geologists claim that it's a natural formation that began 250 to 300 million years ago. Other theories include that early humans were in North America 130,000 years ago and made it. And an expert in Chinese petroglyphs supports the theory that ancient Chinese had made it to America and had created this thing. Now, it does literally look like a waffle print on this rock. It is unexplained, and I don't know personally. I don't have any theories as to what could explain. I don't feel like it's a natural formation, but who is responsible for making it? I don't know. I can't say. I don't have any theories on this one, unfortunately. I've not seen anything like it before. And I've studied geology. I've studied, archaeology in depth, and I don't know of another culture per se that it could be ascribed to. So the Chinese petroglyphs, I guess, could be as good of as any as a theory for it, but still remains unexplained. But the geological natural formation theory, that doesn't quite hold a lot of water with me as being a valid enough explanation. So then we go on to the Davenport and the Pontotoc stele. Now, what this is the Davenport stele, spelled Stele, was unearthed in a burial mound in 1877 in Iowa. It has carvings of the opening of the mouth ceremony, which is of actually Egyptian and Nubian origin. Keeping in mind this was found in Iowa, right? But this ceremony is of an Egyptian or Nubian origin. So what would it be doing in Iowa, of all places? Some researchers think that they're fake, which is always a quick explanation of things, especially if fringe science comes up with a theory and mainstream science doesn't agree with it. Well, then they're quick to kind of put it off onto, that it's a fake or fraud. I don't know. It didn't seem like a fake to me, but then again, I'm just checking my battery life on the other tablet, guys, so I know whether it needs plugging in. Really? 63%. Okay. That kicked me out. There it is. Who asked what's the topic? I missed that comment. Let me go back here for a sec. It must have been way back because I don't see the comment anywhere. Somebody had asked what the topic is. It's the ancient archaeological unexplained anomalies. So things of archaeological origin that have no valid, definite explanation to them. So again, some people think it's fake, but it contains a trilingual text made up of 3 different languages. That is Egyptian, Iberian Punic, and Libyan languages. Now, this has been validated out. So where would it have gotten the 3 different languages and put in Iowa? I don't know. Can't say. Could somebody have brought it there from one of those areas who is a world traveler? I'm not going to say no, but that's about the only explanation I have for this, actually. Now, the Pontotoc stele, Aaron Kilmer was in a class and that he went to through the other group he's in, so he messaged me earlier saying he was going to be late coming in. Now, the Pontotoc stele is the program Professor Fell, who wrote about both the Davenport and the Patotoc cells in his original America, BC, Ancient Settlers in the New World. And Dr. Fell surmised that the Davenport stele dates back to the 22 or Libyan dynasty of the Egyptian Empire. So I don't know what you guys find it to be a fake or real or not, but I say it's possible. And if it did get there, then I would say somebody brought it there, perhaps. I don't know. There's not any other better explanation for it that I can think of than that one. I don't know. It's hard to say. And I know it's more difficult without having the images to show you that those who were in the original show would remember some of the pictures I showed of stuff. But I figured those who are listening on radio wouldn't be able to see the pictures anyway, right? So next we're going on to the America's Pedro Mountain Mummy and the Race of the Little People. Now, this was found in June 1934 when two gentlemen were mining, as gentlemen often did back then, for gold in the San Pedro Mountains in Wyoming. And they discovered a small room in a cave about 4 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and about 10 feet deep. Now, x-rays showed that the first mummy was an encephalitic infant, so the baby that died that had encephalitis, which is an absence of a major portion of the brain, skull, and scalp that occurs in embryonic development, which can lead to a really much enlarged head than what one would see in a typical baby. DNA tests showed it to be Native American and dated it back to about 1700. Took it there before the big flood. Yeah, that is possible, Dad. Why not? That's just, to me, is as good of an explanation as any for how some of these things got to place where there is no other reasonable, rational explanation for them being there, and they can't explain it. So I don't think that they should just be written off as fakes because they can't prove where it came from. So some people believe that it's this mummy that was found is part of a fabled race of little people. Now, these are about a handful of archaeological mysteries that were found in the world, as well as America's back door. But wait, there's more. So again, everybody in my Willows Bend group had voted for us to continue on with the topic. They wanted a part 2 because they were interested. So onward to part 2 of that. But wait, there's more. So the things that science can't explain that's been found archaeologically that are anomalies. And, again, you got to look, when you rule out all the possible explanations for things at that point, you have to look at what's impossible. And then the impossible can become possible when nothing else fits, right? Is how I view things. And I'm not alone. And if that puts me into the realm of fringe science, well, so be it. But if science doesn't have an answer, well, then you have to look at alternative explanations, I think, for these things. Now, for these next ones, we're going to be moving out of the United States and then to other parts of the country, the world. Moving out of the United States and to other parts of the country. Yep, that's it, Donna. So the Akambaro figurines. These are a collection of small ceramic figurines allegedly found in the Akambaro Guanajuato mountain, and they were found in July of 1944. Now, according to accounts, Waldemar Jolsrud discovered them while riding his horse in the area. He went on to hire a local farmer to dig them up, and over 32,000 figurines were found, which included everything from dinosaurs, people from around the world, including Egyptians, Sumerians, bearded Caucasians, and they're clearly in one of those OOP arts, the out of place artifacts that are seemingly much older than what is in the surrounding area of it, right? And that many creationists from around the world declared them to be real because of how far back they date. Now, attempts at dating them suggest a date of 2500 BCE. Getting tongue-tied tonight, guys, forgive me. Date back to 2500 BCE, and they're in really good shape with no showing evidence of having been found like that long ago, found in the ground that long. So, in other words, basically, it doesn't make sense that they were in the ground and that they were in as good of shape as they were in. Now, archaeologically speaking, the strata layers, which are the layers of earth that get formed over set periods of time, and they build up on top of each other. Now, granted, when you have a farming area where the soil is continuously jumbled and turned over again for planting season, it gets a little messy on what things were from what dating period for what, you really have to measure how far down are they turning the earth over for the size blades they're using to do so, as to how far into the strata are they digging with their tools to flip the earth over again to plant again, and how far down, how many years that would equal out to be. So which layer is it going to fall into? Because the further down you go, the older in the timeline it becomes. So these date back to 2500 BCE in what they're showing, and yet, whoever made them had to have an understanding of what dinosaurs look like from people from around the world that may not have been in existence or known of in that one area of the artisan where they lived. Yet, here they were found in the farm ground that had been turned over, but it's still thought to be 2,500 years old. Well, actually now it'd be closer to 5,000 years old as far as how old they are. So it just doesn't make sense, the context they were found versus what they're showing in the art of them versus, how long ago they date back to. All of it, none of it makes sense. So they are considered oop arts that are artifacts found out of place. Supporters claim that the details supports humans were around when dinosaurs were existence on the earth, and others say that the sheer number of them, which was 32,000 of these artifacts, were found. And now I'd seen many of them, and whilst they were, really basic looking things, they were very distinct shapes and figures that you could clearly identify what it was supposed to be. So the artisan was at least capable of creating a dinosaur shape and a specific kind of dinosaur as well, and as well as a humanoid figure, and then decorating it to look like, for example, an Egyptian versus a Caucasian with a beard. So, they had enough skill for that. So others point to the sheer number of artifacts that got found as that's why it was a hoax. So to date, science doesn't accept them as being valid. So at that point, it becomes, I guess, up to the viewers to whether you feel it's real or a hoax. I guess I would need a little bit more information on how far down they were found in the ground, knowing what I know archaeologically of the depth of it compared to how far down a farmer typically digs when they're turning the soil over. I guess I would need more information before I could say more on it. But from the rest of the information that is available on these things, I can't think of a better answer other than saying they're probably real. So up to the individual, I guess, to form an opinion on that one. So next we go into the Dropa stones. Now these were discovered in 1938. So the story goes that an archaeological expedition was sent to investigate a secluded area of the Bayan Karula Mountains on the border dividing China and Tibet. Now, the group allegedly found a series of caves at the summit of the mountain. The caves supposedly contained a large collection of graves with walls that were decorated with drawings of people with elongated heads, along with images of the sun and the moon and stars. They uncovered the graves and found skeletal remains of ancient beings. Hi, Faith. Now,
Hi, Faith.
Christopher says hi. These were around 3 feet tall with abnormally large skulls. They also found a collection of stone discs. Now, these discs were almost 12 inches in diameter with a hole in the center, which, by what we know of modern technology, yeah, it kind of looked like a record, like an album record, like you should listen to music on, except it was made out of stone. It was the same shape and size as what an album is. So it has a hole in the center as well, just like records do for a record player. And they have a groove on the surface that spirals outwards from the center hole, making double spirals. So it comes out from the center and it goes around the circle twice. So there's lines that come out from there. Now, on closer inspection, the grooves along that line are actually small carvings or signs. Now, they're so small that to the naked eye, you wouldn't first notice that. You would just see them as being the lines at looking at it at a regular distance. But up close, they're that small, but they are writings or signs and carvings of some kind. Now, there's been a total of 716 Dropa stones found in those caves. And this is the only place I've ever heard of these archaeological items being located in. I've never heard of them found anywhere else. And I've studied archaeology from a wide number of places around the world, so this is the only case I've ever heard of these. So in 1962, a Professor Sunam Unui, forgive my butchering of it, of the Beijing Academy for Ancient Studies, found that the characters in the grooves are of an unknown language, but he managed to translate it anyway after spending a couple of years on it. After many years of debate with the Academy, they finally allowed him to publish his findings and what he translated it to. So he claimed that an alien spacecraft crashed in that region of the Bayan Han-Shan area 12,000 years ago, and they were called the Dropa or the Zopa, which is D-Z-O-P-A. The local Han tribesmen hunted down and killed most of them, and there were some that still intermarried with the local populations, which was frowned upon. Now, many, as you can imagine, challenged the claims of this, and he ended up being reassigned once he lost a lot of respect once he became published. Now, they allowed him to do the research, they allowed him to publish it, which means they would have had to have reviewed it before he published it, but I guess they weren't expecting the backlash of ridicule, and once standing in the community is very, very important to any Asian culture. People of how they're seen by others is very, very important to them. So if there was ridicule that came of that, that would have been taken very seriously. And so he got, quote, reassigned after that because of the backlash that the bigger community gave him. But they initially thought there had to be something to it in order to allow him to publish it. Just saying on that one. Now, all the stones have disappeared all over the world, however. Photographs do exist of these, so it's up to the individual again to figure whether you find it real or a hoax. Then we go on to the horned human skull. This was discovered in the 1880s in Sayre, Pennsylvania, which is 93 miles from me, actually. And a large burial mound was found, and it was reported that Americans uncovered several strange skulls and bones from this burial mound. The skeletons belonged to anatomically correct men, except for two bony projections about 2 inches above the eyebrows, that the skull had horns. The bones were characterized as giant representations of people who were over 7 feet tall. Now, there are many people or accounts of giants throughout history. The historical cultural records of different people from around the world of giants being a thing and very real and in existence. People in the spiritual community, they say that there are different people as well that were that tall, but these had horns above their eyebrows. Scientists estimated they'd been buried around 1200 CE for current era. They had been discovered by reputable antiquarians focused on the empirical evidence. So basically, they very much were based on facts. There was a quote that says, quote, "We speak from facts, not theory." And that was from a Sir Richard Colt Hoare in describing what the antiquarians looked at things as. Now, this isn't the first time horned skulls have been found in North America. Similar skulls were found near Wellsville, New York. Sayre is only about 92.5 miles away from Wellsville. So, and again, Sayre is about 93 miles away from me. So add on to that. So about 180 miles from here. They are also found in a mining village near El Paso, Texas. The artifacts were stolen from those sites. So a lot of the things that get stolen and so forth or disappear from the record of things, whether it's museum records, etc., they ended up in private collections around the world on the black market and so forth. So I don't see Dercio. Give him my love sent out to Dercio. So then we go on to the map of the creator. So in 1999, a Professor Chuvryoff was called to a person's home who reported a strange slab buried in his backyard. The slab took over a week to completely unearth it, and it's about 5 feet high, 3.5 feet wide, 5 feet thick, and weighs at least a ton. It's been determined to be some sort of a 3D relief map of the Ural region. The Dashka stone, as it's also known as, contains representations of civil engineering work known as weirs, which are small dams, irrigation systems, and powerful dams. And to date, hi Terry, the technology used to make the map is unknown and is extremely advanced. The map also has numerous inscriptions of hieroglyphs of an unknown origin on them as well. And a group of specialists, Russian and Chinese, in the field of cartography, which is map making, geology, math, chemistry, and Old Chinese language, studied it and identified it as a map of the Ural region as well. So if it's genuine, it would suggest the existence of a highly ancient developed civilization, and it continues to undergo ongoing testing to see just what else it may contain. But pretty important find for the region and just being someone else's backyard. So then we have the aluminum wedge of Aiud, which was discovered in 1974. This is 2 kilometers east of Aiud, Romania, on the banks of the Mureș River, under 35 feet of sand alongside of 2 mastodon bones. It resembles the head of a hammer. It was taken to the Archaeological Institute of Cluj-Napoca and found to be made of aluminum. Basically, it's an alloy that's made up of 12 different elements. and the aluminum is not discovered till 1808. And the fact that it was encased with mastodon bones puts it to be at least 11,000 years old. It remains an undisclosed location at this time. Some say that it resembles the like the foot of landing gear. I have seen the image of it, and it is shaped like landing gear. So like what you would see on an aircraft where it's like a foot, so kind of shaped like a sewing machine foot, but bigger, of course. So it's unknown of its origins, who made it, where it came from, but it wasn't found until 1974. And some of those, I mean, it dates back at least 11,000 years old, yet we didn't identify the different elements in it until 1808. So, I mean, I think that that right there is proof that there's something more to it than just what meets the eye. Who made it, where it came from, and so forth is still unknown and being studied. So, and that was all that I could find on that one. So then we go on to the Los Lunas Decalogue stone, which was discovered in 1880s. And it is a large boulder on the side of Hooter, sorry, let me see. Is it Hidden or Hooter? Hooter Mountain near Los Lunas, New Mexico. And it's about 3.5 miles south of Albuquerque. Now, it's been translated by some to be an abridged version of the Ten Commandments in a form of Paleo-Hebrew, which was an early form of the Phoenician language. It has a letter group resembling YHWH, or Yahweh, making 4 appearances on the stone. Yahweh is another name that people call God, and who are especially of Jewish faith or Judeo-Hebrew faith. And it means the existing one. That's what Yahweh translates into. And the first recorded mention of the artifact is from 1933. The stone weighs over 80 tons, and if valid, it means that it's proof of a pre-Columbian contact of Semitic or Jewish contact with the Americas. Excuse me. Good old allergies. Paleo-Hebrew, yes, Gina. Yes, Yahweh is an ancient sacred term, meaning basically it's another thing people call God. But is common in the Judeo faith, which, you know, yep, you could have written a whole word, it would be okay. So this, if it's valid, it means that it's proof of a pre-Columbian contact of Semitic or Jewish contact with the Americas, providing proof that some Israelis settled in the Americas. Because of its weight, it was not moved and is still in situ, meaning in sight. So it's still there, you know, in what did I say, near in Mexico. So yes, it's still in Los Lunas, New Mexico, still present in that location because it was too big for them to move it. It's accessible by buying a picture permit for $25 from the Mexican Stand Landing Office. So you can go and check this out if you happen to be ever in that area of New Mexico. You can go buy a ticket to go see it. In Jewish faith, that's how they spell it. Yes. Well, it's spelled Yahweh. Yahweh is in the Jewish faith, is meaning God. So I think that's pretty cool that you can still go see this thing. And it's proof that, you know, people moved around even back then. If Israelis were settling in South America way back then, you know, that goes pretty far back. So basically they were trying to reproduce the Ten Commandments, essentially. So then we go over to the giants of North America. Back to the giants again. See it, there's more evidence of them. So giant human remains, any bones representative of a person between 7 to 12 feet in height. A human skeleton was found at Lompoc Ranch. I can't read my own writing sometimes. It's terrible. in California in 1883 by soldiers digging a pit for a powder magazine. Now, it had a double row of teeth, which other reports of giant remains do report having 2 rows of teeth in the mouth, or at least in the skeleton. The skull shows 2 rows of teeth, and was surrounded by numerous stone axes and carved shells. And in 1856, a decaying human skeleton measuring 10 feet 9 inches was unearthed by workers plowing a vineyard in what's now West Virginia. With the dash, that's how they still do it today. The O is sacred. Oh, gotcha, Gina. I thought you just didn't want to spell out the word. I was like, it's okay too. My bad. So they did find other remains in 1856. A decaying human skeleton measuring 10 feet 9 inches was unearthed by workers plowing a vineyard in what's now West Virginia. Yeah, 10 feet 9 inches. That's a tall drink of water, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So in 1895, near Toledo, Ohio, 20 skeletons were found seated and facing east with jaws and teeth twice as large as modern people. Thank you, Gina. In 1928, a farmer digging a pit unearthed a 9-foot, 11-inch tall skeleton near Waterproof, Louisiana. Now, there aren't any accurate photos that I could find online that showed these remains. Most of them were really hokey, where it showed like these, 10 times as big as the human sitting next to him in the picture. It was ridiculous. That being said, I did see photographs once on a show. Oh, that's weird, Karen. Well, hopefully it stays on for you, your internet. And I always blank on his name. Maybe Sandy Miller can help me. She knows I always forget his name. He is he has his own broadcast show. He has a mad ton of videos on YouTube. He's an older guy, has A in his name, and he wears glasses, and he always says like he's broadcasting from a secret location. He is very conservative in his political views, and he is kind of born again Christian. So a lot of that is also in his reports. That said, he is also kind of an amateur archaeologist. So he follows up on a lot of these stories. I'm blanking on his name. I know I'm going to probably think of it once the show's over with. I always forget his name because he can get on my nerves with kind of being judgmental. L.A. Marzoli. Thank you, Sandy. I knew you'd be able to get it for me. I always forget his name. I always blank out on it. I don't know why. I remember the A in his name, and that's it. So, yes, L.A. Marzoli has a mad ton of YouTube videos if anyone is interested in. So Tanya's familiar with him too. Yeah. So he has a mad ton of YouTube videos out there, and he had followed up on some of these stories and did locate this obscure museum that's privately owned in South America, to where there was a display of like elongated skulls and stuff that was on display, and next to it had a display of but it was really like the hokey pictures of the giants with the 10 times bigger than the human standing next to him, having dug up a skull or something. They're silly, but these were more realistically sized. So when he asked the owner about it, who was actually, or the guy running it anyway, who was present, he said it was his uncle's shop, and that he said there was more to it, but his uncle didn't like talking about it. And I guess through kind of pushing and nudging him, yes, I agree, Sandy. He has a lot of great older videos. Born Again's tried to get me. Now, not all born again Christians are that way, but a lot of them are, unfortunately. I have nothing against anybody of any religious group whatsoever, but give mutual respect. And my views are different than yours. Leave it at that. If you can't talk about it, that's fine, but don't try to convert me, and I won't try to convert you.
That's true.
Yeah, I give respect and leave it alone. And if you can't talk about it, let it be. But yeah, I like a lot of his older videos as well. And he said that his uncle had known, he had worked for somebody who had discovered one of these skeletons, these giant skeletons for real, and had actual pictures that were realistically based, dimensions to the photograph of the human standing next to the actual skeletons, not these, ludicrous internet ones that are way out of proportion, that it's not real when you're looking at stupid what they do with some of these. But that he tried to get a hold of them, and I guess in the end the uncle wasn't willing to part with them, but he did see them at least. So he was testifying to the fact that he had seen the originals, to know that this is a real thing. And again, many cultures around the world have stories of giants in them. Many are still actively believed in, especially in like Ireland, Scotland, things like that, and with as being like part of, or asleep in certain mountains, and that they were responsible for moving different mountains. They have local legends and lore associated with them, but there's still an active belief in them today. So yeah, a lot of them can have a cult mentality. He interviewed a man in the military. Yep. Oh, yes, that was a whole separate story he did on that one. You're right. So Sandy just reminded me, he had a video where he interviewed a man who wanted to remain anonymous, who testified that he was over in Iraq in some battle where they were fighting. He got dropped in on this battle that was ongoing against an actual real live giant who did kill some of the members of his team. But it was done very, very hush hush. They did ended up taking it down, and basically the military took custody of the body of it, and everybody was sworn to secrecy and not talk about it. So he was only willing to talk about it off camera, but and to remain anonymous. So, but he testified that what he said was 100% valid and true, that he witnessed this thing, that it had red hair and was just massive and massively strong, and was taking the guys down through just basically stone tools and spears and so forth. It killed several of his teammates, and then once it was killed through an untold number of gunshots and so forth, they took it down. But then they took the body, wrapped it up in some sort of a netting, and transported it out with helicopters, and then they were sworn to secrecy on it. So I think that there's something more. Annette asks, isn't there something similar with Native Americans that is held sacred? Yes. Yeah, there is. Many areas around the world still have a belief in giants, and the skinwalkers are one of them for a lot of American Indian cultures. Yeah, 2 sets of teeth, right? So, I think that there has to be something to it for so many cultures around the world to have this belief, and still being an active belief, or legends, in the legends of them. And again, because so few of them are existing, then yeah, there's going to be a cover-up of it. Red-haired giants in the Grand Canyon. I haven't heard of those, Tanya. That's all right. I know. I do Sandy speak. For those who don't know, Sandy Miller is my admin for pretty much anything I choose to do on Facebook land. So bless her heart, she's my backup when my memory fails me. So rumors state that there are evidence of these finds that have even Darwinians have worked hard to cover it up, to protect the theory of evolution being, just a straight line and no offshoots coming off of it. And we've done stories in here before on shows on the Nephilim, and that being a suspected cause for the giantism. And the Nephilim are thought to be a human angel offspring from, quote, the fallen angels of biblical lore, that fell to earth and took a liking to human women and mated with them and had the offspring. So that was one line of theory regarding the giants were they the Nephilim, and also, or whether it's alien origins, who knows? But almost every culture has stories of giants in it. Met a couple people with teeth on the roof of their mouth, says Karen. Yeah, that would be a birth defect, but these are like two full sets, two rows of teeth back to back, so that they could lose one set and still have another full set of teeth in their mouth. For the giants is a commonly reported trait anyway. So then go on to the Kensington runestone from 1898. There was a Swedish farmer claims that he found the runestone while clearing his land of trees and stumps. It was attached to the roots of a small tree. It weighed 200 pounds. It was 31 inches high, 16 inches wide, and 6 inches thick. No, we didn't have any trolls in here, Gina. So 9 years after its discovery, forgive any butchering of this first name, Hjalmar Holland of Wisconsin University, it's a Swedish name, sorry, deciphered it to read, quote, 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on exploration journey from Vinland over the west. We camped by 2 skerries, 1 day journey from the stone. After we come home, 10 men, red with blood and tortured. Hail Virgin Mary, saved from evil, have 10 men by the sea to look after our ship. 14 days journey from this island, year 1362. So it's kind of like a little journal entry on this, made on this stone, of their journey in, from Viking times, of a journey they made with their ship, and they had some battle where 10 men were killed and they were bringing them home to bury them, I would assume, but it dates back to the year 1362. So in July 2000, a detailed physical analysis was done on this stone. In November 2000, geologist Scott Woolton suggested that the stone was made by Vikings Knights Templar in 1362. It's in a museum in the Alexandria, Minnesota, in the Runestone Museum currently. So one can go see it if you're ever in that area. But yeah, it's like a journal entry basically made on stone. I don't see you yet, but hi, Aaron, welcome. Well, you didn't have to pop in if you're busy, silly. So the next is ancient footprint. This was discovered in 1987 by paleontologist Jenny McDonald in New Mexico. So a footprint was found clearly belonging to modern humans, cast in the Permian strata, which is the Permian layer of stone, that dates from 290 to 248 million years ago. Long before humans or even birds and dinosaurs even existed on this planet or were known to. Yet it's very clearly a footprint that was found. And like I said, when you can test anything that's made up of organic matter that contains carbon in it, and since carbon decays at a set rate, that set rate gets measured to determine how old approximately something is. And with archaeology, they go from the furthest date back up to the more recent date. Why, I don't know. It's just how I've never heard a valid explanation for that, but it's what they do. I've just learned to work with it. But so it's a whole lot longer ago than what we thought humans even existed on the planet. Yet it's very clearly a human footprint. There was a 1992 article written in the Smithsonian Magazine. It noted that paleontologists call such anomalies as problematica. So there's still like a plethora of things that are unknown about this. Obviously, they call it problem because it bumps the timeline, and they like to keep that straight and narrow timeline of events in their heads, and we know this is what it is, and we're not changing it for anybody. And yet Here they are, things like this are, again, would be considered ooparts, which are objects found out of place for what's the known existing thought on something or theory on something. And this is one of them. Humans didn't exist back that far back, allegedly, and yet how did this footprint get there? And I know science and archaeology, they would have retested this sucker several times to come up with the same timeline, just to make sure there wasn't some error in the testing or whatever, because they would have been doubting that is what they got on it. So I'm guessing, they would have retested this thing over and over again just to make sure, and they can't explain it. So let's see how much time we got left. About 15 minutes. Let's see. How long is the next show? Or I can summarize for you and squeeze it in. Come on, little girl, you got to get out of my way. I love you, but move along. I'm not the land bridge that you think I am. Okay. We'll squeeze in what we can till it's time to go. And then I don't know if I'm going to be up to writing traditionally after this week or not. Depends how I heal. I mean, I can hold a pen between my pointer finger and my middle finger and write, but it looks like left-handed handwriting when you're right-handed. So to write 20 pages of notes isn't a good thing to write that way. So I may have to pull out and do the same thing again for next week. I will keep you guys posted on that. I'm just going to throw that out there now, but that may have to be the case where I pick up topics I've already covered long ago and far away, and do them again for next week, depending on how my thumb joint's doing by then. We'll see. But anyway, that's where it's at. So, and right now it hurts to bend anywhere near holding a pen or with any, there's no pressure I can put behind it that isn't quite painful still to hold things with my thumb joint. So, all right, so we'll do what we can over the next few minutes from this section of it, and then we'll call it a night. So, ancient archaeological anomalies, part 3. So, anomalous artifacts can be divided into 3 different categories. The prehistoric science and technology category, which are exhibit evidence and applications of apparently lost sciences and technologies from before their, quote, official discovery. Thank you. I appreciate your support, guys. Number 2, the cross-culturality and diffusionism, which these artifacts are in the wrong places, so to speak. They provide evidence suggested of cross-cultural diffusion between ancient prehistoric cultures, meaning cultures that previously weren't thought to have anything to do with each other. There's evidence now saying they did after all. And the ooparts, which are, which we discussed before, are the out-of-place artifacts found within the strata that doesn't make sense to what they are. Oh, thank you, Annette. Well, that's my thinking, is she's saying that there's a lot of previous topics many haven't seen. And my archives are gone now from the group, so I don't have them to refer people back to seeing. So I'm trying to pick stuff we haven't covered in, 6 months or more ago that can make up a 2-hour show. So from before humans are believed to have existed, as an example, like that footprint would be a new part. It's found out a place that pushes the timeline way, way back. So, right, Aaron, that's kind of why I was saying that I don't know how it's going to end up doing. I'll know more when we get a little bit closer to next week. The stitches are dissolvable, which I usually end up having to take out myself before they dissolve because they cause infection and stuff. So my skin kind of has enough of them and starts to try to reject them long before they can dissolve fully on their own. So let's see, the medicine wheel, which was in Wyoming's Bighorn medicine wheel in Lovell, Wyoming. So in the 1970s, astronomer John Eddy noted some of the wheel's spokes pinpoint the direction of the sunrise on different solstices, and others mark the rising points of other stars in the sky, and it's a mystery as to who built it. This thing is huge, massive, massive, and it is very interesting because it is set up much like a medicine wheel. It does have spokes on it, and they do point to very distinct astrological things that happen throughout the year in the night sky that are predictable over time. Yet where does the knowledge come from to make it, for how far back it dates? So it's a mystery who originally made it. Yes, exactly, Sandy. It's in the crease of the thumb. So so the next is the Great Serpent Mound in Hillsboro, Ohio. Excuse me. It does keep turning, Aaron. Great journey song. It's a 1,300-foot earthwork shaped like an undulating snake that its head is swallowing an egg. And it was first spotted by European settlers in the year 1812. It was left undisturbed till the Smithsonian's sent 2 surveyors out to map the site in the 1840s. Scholars agree it was built by the pre-Columbian people, but they can't agree on by the whom part or the when part or the purpose of the mound part. Speculation goes everything from a giant tomb to it having astronomical purposes. It's unknown which one. Yeah, I haven't seen ISIS yet either, so I don't know. But then again, I didn't see you come in when everybody was saying hi to you, Aaron. So, and Hemet, California, the Hemet maze carving is a 3-foot square carving with an interlocking maze pattern. Archaeologists have only found a handful of other examples of this particular design in North America, but all have been found in California, interestingly. Researchers have no idea of their origin, meaning, or their significance. So it's up to the individual to figure that one out, I guess. The Kindersdorp spheres in South Africa. So over the past several decades, South African miners have found hundreds of metallic spheres. There are 2 types. Now, these are fully formed, found in place, when they're digging up for gemstones and stuff. They've been coming across these little metal balls that are fully formed, and there's 2 different kinds. One of them is a solid bluish metal with white flecks on it, and the one is found in a pre-Columbian mineral deposit, making it an unbelievable 4,500 million years old. The other is it's a softer, so it's shaped like the iron type of outside, but inside is spongy, has a spongy center. So like they've broken it open and it's like spongy inside. And some of them can be seen in the museum in Kirchdorf, South Africa, but there are lots of pictures online of them. They are interesting because at least 200 have been found and extracted at the Wonderstone silver mine in South Africa. They're an average of 1 to 4 inches in diameter, composed of a nickel steel alloy that doesn't occur naturally, yet they're found buried in the earth in different depths and stuff that are only kind of come across in the mining process, meaning they have to dig down pretty far. And so who buried them and why? But they were already made when they were buried. Some have a thin shell about 1/4 inch thick. When broken apart, contains a strange spongy material that disintegrates to dust upon contact with air. You've seen something on those before. Yeah, they're very cool. Now, geologists claim that they're formed by a natural process, yet I don't buy it because, again, more research says that they form naturally and that there is that nickel steel alloy doesn't occur naturally. So how can it form? They're contradicting themselves in the research. In one, it says that it's that kind of a mixture of alloy minerals don't occur naturally, and yet geologists are saying they're formed by a natural process. So they're contradicting themselves there, which leads me to believe that it doesn't occur naturally. No, you're not completely spongy inside. You're right. The next is the Olmec application of magnetism, which goes back to 2000 BCE. And these are called, quote, the Fat Boys of Guatemala, is 6 feet high and found to be magnetized both at its temple and its navel areas, its belly button. Many other examples exist that show that artisans were aware of the magnetism property. So like magnets, you know, things will stick to it, of other like properties. Of the collection of, quote, Fat Boys on display, 4 of the heads and 3 of the bodies were found to be magnetized. Yes, yes. And the Olmecs are, we covered the Olmecs in another topic of ancient unknown origin civilization. It's not known who they came from or where they disappeared to when their culture disappeared. There are signs of their culture left behind, but nobody knows who they were or where they went. So 4 of the heads and 3 of the bodies were found to be magnetized. All 4 of the heads have a magnetic pole in their right temple, other side. 3 of them have magnetic south pole that's below the right ear, and the 4th has a magnetic south pole that's in the left temple. Quite unlikely to have happened by just mere chance. The oldest known, these are the oldest known intentionally magnetized stones that have been found. But, you know, it says known, however, again, who the Olmecs were and where they came from or where they went remains unknown to this day. Science and archaeology have no clue on that one. The Nebra sky discs. Now, one was found on top of a mountain in Middelburg in Germany, along with a horde of other, quote, Bronze Age relics. Guys are funny talking about SpongeBob. That dated to around 1600 BCE and was long thought to be a hoax, but is now accepted as actually being real. It's thought to have been made by a race of people that lived in Europe before the arrival of the Celts, and it's now considered to be one of the oldest chart of the heavens in the world. It's thought to have been used as a complex astronomical clock for harmonization of both solar and lunar calendars. Since its discovery, archaeology and astronomers have been puzzled by the shape of the moon on the disk. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to ancient Babylonian rule, a 13th month calendar should only be present basically to the lunar calendar when one sees the constellation of the moon and Pleiades exactly as they appear on the Nebra disk. So in other words, they are describing something that is a full 1,000 years before the Babylonians did, and that this moon, as it appears in the sky with what's around it, only appeared in the timeline before the Babylonians. That's evidence that, you know, the sky changes for what time of year it is, what's present, and certain things only appear every so many years, and that is one of them, is that the way the moon is. So, and that some ancient calendars had a 13-month calendar, and that 13th month only appeared every so often. So this moon is evidence that it was in existence of the nights, a knowledge of the night sky 1,000 years before the Babylonians knew of it. Hi, Autumn. This probably will be the last one that we cover for tonight, the Ondecathera mechanism. Some words I have to spell out phonetically in my notes so I know how to pronounce them when I get to them. So it's discovered in 1900 in a shipwreck off the Greek islands, and this mechanism has over 30 geared wheels and dials, and the remains are covered in astronomical inscriptions. It's now realized to be designed specifically to calculate the metonic cycle, which is a period of 19 years, after which the new and full moons return to the same days of the year. It was the basics of the Greek calendar and is still used to calculate movable feasts like Easter, So like, Easter appears on the, certain Sunday of each year, of each month in that specific year. But the date of it can vary from year to year, right? So that's what it's talking about, that, this cycle only appears once every 19 years. And so this is clocking those types of things. And the Saros eclipse predictions, which are eclipses separated by 18 years, 10 days, and 8 hours. It also contained knowledge of that on there. And it dates to around the end of the 2nd century BCE. And it's the most sophisticated mechanism known from the ancient world. The mechanism has 3 main dials, 1 on the front and 2 in the back. There is a model that has been made of what it would have looked like when it was first formed. It's pretty amazing technology for how far back it dates. So you guys are still talking about the SpongeBob song. So basically, yeah, this is like the oldest known mechanism to clock the correct astrological events that happen, in time periods. So there are things that only happen every so often in the night sky, but they obviously would have had been tracking that over time to have a proper ideal of it. So that's where we're going to stop tonight because I'm out of time. So we'll wrap it up here. I mean, there's more things in here that we covered originally, but that's okay. You guys get the idea. There was probably more than enough out there to even go forward and cover a whole bunch more for a whole other episode we could have done originally, but that was, as it was, 3 episodes we did in a row, 3 weeks worth of shows. So yeah, there's a lot of different unexplained archaeological sites out there that nobody has any full idea of an explanation for them. So that's going to wrap it up for me tonight. I will make a post in the groups as to what I'm doing later this week. If we are going to vote on a topic, I will do a write-up of that in the group that you guys can, I'll do a poll so you guys can vote on a topic if I'm up to taking notes as we get closer to next Monday. From November 2019 until January 2020, felt like a year because my ex-roommate girl was obsessed. Oh, you're still talking about SpongeBob. Okay. People are always kind of there goes a squirrel thing in my chat. Thank you guys. So yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on how I'm doing, but it's a wait and see thing on how I heal and when. But anyways, that does it for me tonight, guys. Please check out the Soma Fusion Network. They're also available online on everywhere. Basically, they stream everywhere around the world on every available social media site, through radio, on YouTube, everywhere. They're on Facebook as well. There's a host of other shows that appear. There's a whole weekly schedule. There's something playing almost every single night so far. And check us out. See if you find other shows that you might like on there. And otherwise, I will see you guys Sunday night for Goddesses and Devils with our lovely Katie Kamara, and sometime partially out of it, Amanda McManus, who I was replacing on this show. She's been appearing for part of the show. So anyways, have a wonderful and blessed night, everybody. Thank you for listening in and watching as always. And I will see you guys around social media land. Good night, everybody. Lots of love and light.